Patrick, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
My pleasure, Trey. Doing good. Gearing up for the holidays and try just home for the next few days. Yeah.
So I am really excited to talk some stand up with you, Patrick, because I saw that you were on the Cap City slate, I want to say a month or so ago, and you can't follow everyone in stand up. So I didn't know what your stand up history was. I know that you're a funny guy. I know that you're a really good actor. I know from listening to interviews with you that you're a really bright dude too. But I was shocked to find out that you've been at this for less than a year. This is something that you dabbled in your early 20s, and 40 years later you now
Yeah.
have this itch. But it's not, I need to tell people that you have a healthy respect for the art form as well. You love stand-up comedy and you understand the work that it takes to get good at something like this. So what was it that pushed you into this medium to at least try and give it a go over the last year or so?
I absolutely do. I have great respect for it. I was just, so I did this for a minute when I was like 21, 22. I was actually at the Comedy Store, and within 2 months, I was booking 10 o'clock spots in the OR room, and
Oh,
things
wow.
like they were going all right. But I went to Africa to do a couple of films with Oliver Reed and Eartha Kitt. They're horrible movies, but I came back and because that was my first experience out of the country working. It's a better part of 4 months, and I was just like, I'm committed. I'm an actor, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And I sort of, I guess I always regretted it. Now I'm a snob when it comes to stand up. I probably, a big fan of maybe 3 to 4% of what's out there. But um, I felt like I was getting a little complacent here, because we got a little, beach joint, hanging out at the beach. I'm playing golf, getting into tequila with the boys. I love my sort of, I work here and there now. I don't work. I don't, when you're a father of four and you're the sole, provider, you early on for decades, you take any and every dumb job that comes your way. So I got to stop doing that. And so now I only do stuff that's of interest to me in regards to work. Live action. Um, so that it's few and far between. You know what I'm saying? Of stuff that I really want to do, and I felt like I was getting a bit complacent. I needed to rock the boat a little bit. It was just like, screw it. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do this again. Now I got my feet wet doing this show called Letters from a Nut. Barry Martyr, who's Jerry Seinfeld's producing partner, wanted me to do these live stage readings. And I would open them with 10 minutes of talking, which became 10 minutes of stand up. And that became my favorite part of the whole show. So I left that show and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on stand up. So about 8 months ago, I started doing, just like 15 minutes the improv or, the belly room or flappers or, stuff like that. Um,
Ice House in Pasadena, stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So, about 3, 4 months into just doing that, I got an offer to headline improv in Irvine. And I was like 99% no, 1% yes. It's like, I'm not ready for this. But then I thought to myself, wait a second. You got to go. You went into this as a risk to have fun, to be dangerous. You got to go with the 1%. And I go, I've got 2 months to prepare for that. So when I did Irvine, and I told them I showed up. I go, I hope I could eke 50 minutes out because, the most I've ever really done is about 20. And they go, all right, that'll be okay. It was sold out. It was 500 people. And when I was on stage, there's a timer in the back. Now, 60% of what I did that night was untried and untested. I hadn't been working it out at the improv or this, that. I didn't have time to do that. I looked at the timer, it was an hour, and I went 70 minutes, my first headline. Then I did, Brea, and I did other local joints. And then I ended up doing Salt Lake City. I did 3 shows and Naples recently. And so I'm traveling around a bit and doing that. And I'm really looking forward to coming out to Austin.
You did 40 to 50 minutes off the top of your head in Irvine, and it actually went pretty well too.
Yeah, it went great. Yeah, listen,
Wow.
it's a bit of a cheat. I've been able to fast track the shit
Yeah.
because first off, I have a lifetime of experiences. I know what works for me. I know what comics work for me. I like Chappelle and Patton. I like mine's all anecdotal. It's primarily true. I really, really, they say stand-up's like, two truths and a lie, I've heard. It's just perspective that I throw on stuff. And I feel like I have
Well, I also listen to you at like like conventions like that, and I hear how well you present yourself on stage. You're a great storyteller. Some of these stories you've told over and over again. That's not to say that you're telling these same
Yeah.
stories on stage, but you're a very polished storyteller. You're confident, you're quick on your feet. I mean, all of those things do play to somebody eventually getting comfortable, but you've also gotten comfortable in a stage-like setting throughout the last 40 years too. So it is a bit of a cheat code for you.
It is a little bit, yes. Because I started doing, I wouldn't do cons forever, and then I started doing them about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I went. The first one I did was Salt Lake City.
Hmm.
They said you got a panel. I go, well, panel to me means a table and a couple people sitting around it and answering questions. And so they pick me up, and at the table. They go, you got your panel now. I go, cool. I go, I'm backstage. They go, wow, your panel sold out. Sold out. They don't sell tickets for panels at Comic Cons. It just means seats are full.
Yeah.
Go, I go, oh, I go, who's on the panel? They go, it's just you, in a microphone. I go, how many people are here? And they go, it's about 4,000. And I walked on stage, so I had no time to get nervous. And I just immediately processed, wow, you couldn't ask for a better audience. These are all fans. You have, at this point in my life, I was like, I've got 52 years of ridiculous stories. And an hour wasn't enough time. I just had so much fun doing that. So getting on stage at Comic Cons and being able to sort of, craft stories, put perspective on them and this and that. But when you do stand up, it can't be all that, So I tell a couple of interesting stories and just, some of, what I think are the best and really sort of messed up things like about, the time they made this movie called Paterno, which was not about the winningest coach in college football history. It was about the Jerry Sandusky scandal in 2016. There was an inquiry from the producers of this film as to whether or not I would be interested in playing the role of Jerry Sandusky. So that is a fun, stupid story. And I run off on that, with just all kinds of perspective and fun, but I only do a couple of those. Because this is the thing, if you're a little bit of a celebrity, all right, that's going to sell tickets, right? That's
Yeah.
going to get you on stage. But that gives you about the first 2 or 3 seconds on stage because
Yeah.
they came out for stand up, comedy. So it doesn't matter who you are. You got to be able to do that. Also, I feel like my life is relative. I fall into the line of relatable stands because even though I've been in something of an interesting career, I guess, or not normal, my life has, been rather ordinary in many ways. I've been married for 33 years, 4 kids, 7 dogs. A mean wife, as I call it, but she's actually she's quite awesome. But you got to throw your wife under the bus. You got to throw your mom under the bus. You got to throw everybody under the bus because nobody wants to hear you do anything but complain on stage. Really, that's what they want, and they want you to complain in a smart, funny way that they can relate to. And so I have that relatability factor. I feel like, you know.
I agree with that. Having the wife and the kids to complain about is important. And you mentioned that Chappelle is one of your great influences. I've watched Chappelle working material out. That comedy club crowd, they're the
Yeah.
great equalizer. Because if you're up there, I don't care who you are, and you're not saying
No,
funny stuff, people are not going to
no,
laugh because they're waiting for
no,
the punchline.
that's right. And it doesn't fly. Yeah.
So you said that you were working in the comedy store for a couple of months and actually getting 10 o'clock gigs. Had you gotten passed by Mitzi back in the mid 1980s, that little bit of time that you were working there?
I did. That's how I got there on a Friday night. I remember a friend of mine, Lois Bromfield, who's a comic and a writer, and she goes, I got off stage. She goes, I hate you. She goes, I hate you. I'm like, what? And she goes, you've been doing this for 2 months, and here you are. You had a great little set there. That was awesome. And I go, oh, well, it's fun. And I didn't realize at the time that I really had an opportunity there. I should have stuck with it, but I became a working actor, and I
Yeah.
guess I just didn't kind of miss it that way. So I'm going in reverse. People don't go into stand-up comedy at 60 years old. You know what I'm saying? But I
No.
am, and I had to take a page out of my own advice to two of my sons, and they're both in the industry. They're both super good looking. They're talented. They're funny. They're charming, and they've got really great hearts. They're two of the best people in the world I know, and they're talented. They are working right now, and I'm really proud of them. But I always told them, I go, don't put off happiness till success and money, because it's cliche. We all know that doesn't bring happiness. But boy, I go, there are no guarantees in this business. So you better enjoy the day. You better enjoy the journey, because that's all any of us have anyways. And so when I was asking myself, well, where do you expect to go with this at 60? It didn't matter. It's been going great. I'm having fun, and I'm just going to ride this out.
So, who were some of the comedians that you were around at that time? Was that the era of like Jim Carrey? Was Seinfeld there at that
Well,
point? Who were some of the
it
other people
was.
that were
I
around?
don't remember Jerry there, but Jerry's probably working his stuff out, back in New York at Gotham or something like that. But at the time, it was Kinison, Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy would pop on stage and work his stuff out. Andrew Dice Clay, all those guys, Gilbert, everybody.
Was Bill Hicks there at that time?
Bill wasn't.
Okay.
I don't remember Bill at that time.
Because I know
Yeah,
Kinnison and Hicks were friends because they were both from Houston, but I feel like
yeah,
Hicks had moved out there a couple years after that.
right, right, right.
So you are somebody who is friends and colleagues with Barry Sonnenfeld, who I hold quite fondly because I believe that he has written one of the greatest books of all time, his autobiography slash memoir from a few years ago. I interviewed him about that. Got him to tell a bunch of stories from that book, including his one day working on a porn set that I love that story so much. I literally had it animated. I set all of that up though, to ask you because you worked with him in one of the Men in Black films, a series of
Yeah.
unfortunate events most recently. Do you have a favorite Barry Sonnenfeld story? Because he has one of those Larry David type auras around him.
Oh, wow. First off, and not even to, try to color this with humor. I adore Barry Seinfeld. I knew who Barry was, obviously before I worked with him. And I remember seeing him as a guest on Letterman. And I thought to myself, this guy, this filmmaker, this director, this, amazing filmmaker and DP is the funniest guest, actually, that I've ever seen on Letterman. So quirky, and he's a genius, but wonderful man. I worked with him on the Tick, and then we did a film called Big Trouble, which was it's a great movie. It's really fun, very entertaining. Unfortunately, it was about a comedy with the bomb on an airplane, and it was set to come out September 20th,
Hmm,
2001.
terrible.
So yes, it never ended up even seeing the light of day, but people see it, now on streaming or whatnot, and they really enjoy it. It had a great cast. It worked with Men in Black. And of course, one of my best experiences ever working with him was on a series of unfortunate events. Told Barry, I go, if it wasn't, geez, for you, I don't know what my career would look like without you. Or, Seth MacFarlane or Jerry Seinfeld or the people that I've worked with, when I did a series of unfortunate events, Barry wanted me to do that. And Daniel Handler, who had seen this independent film I did years ago called The Woman Chaser, I was a big fan of that film. And they both wanted me to play Lemony. Now, I would argue that if it was up to Netflix, I wouldn't have been on their top 200 list because that's just not the way I'm perceived in this industry. This industry is very, very, for such a creative industry, they seem to be very narrow-minded in many ways. And they think you do one thing, comedy or humor or this or that. They just don't. They don't get it at times. So fortunately, I had Barry and Daniel Handler there in my corner saying, no, Warburton's got to do this. And then when I was reviewed great in the show, and that first season, I had great reviews. Um, I'm thankful to Barry. I love that man, and I love that his books. I've read both of them now. He's got a new one that just came out.
Oh, really? I'm glad you
Yes,
told me that. I'm going to get it.
yes, he's a wonderful storyteller. Um, yeah, he tells funny stories about he cast me in The Tick, which was the first time we worked together, just because of the dent I left in the couch. I would argue that it had probably had a little more to do with our meeting.
Y'all were way ahead of the curve with the Tick too, by the way, because the smart ass superhero has become a very popular thing in modern times.
We literally were the first ones out of the gates, and it was really smart. It just cost a little bit. Nobody was doing single camera half hour at the time. Fox didn't know what they had, and they threw us to the dogs, and that was it. We did 9 episodes, and still to this day, it's got a rather large cult following. Um, the Tick is an ingenious creation by Ben Edlund, and the Tick will live on forever. I was on as a producer on the latest live action incarnation. I actually wanted to do it, but then I realized early on it's like, look, the Tick, like Batman, or Superman, it's just forever. There are going to be new Ticks, new Batmans, new this and that, and then and it's your time to step out, and Sarah Finowitz did an awesome job. There'll be many, many Ticks in the future because the Tick will never go away. He's just fun and satirical, and so I'm just glad that I had gotten that opportunity years ago. Wish it could have lived on, but yeah, Fox, they were dummies. I could name names. I'm not going to. They literally ask questions like, do they need to be in costume? Do they have to? When you're having to answer questions like that, yeah.
Oh man. Well, look, we try and tell our kids there's no such thing as a stupid question. That's when they're kids. When there's adults, there's a lot of stupid questions.
Yeah.
Patrick, and talking and hearing you talk about fatherhood, I love to hear about it because you strike me as somebody who has a close relationship with all your kids. That's awesome. I've got two kids myself. They're 10 and 8, so I'm a little bit further behind on the timeline of gaining that independence back with my wife. What do you love about fatherhood, though, Patrick?
Really, just almost anything and everything, Trey, because we have been very, very fortunate. I put my parents through hell a bit, but I was very rebellious. I could, tell you, and it's long stories of why I was rebellious, but I was rebellious. And
Much like you, I grew up in a very religious household, which fostered a sort of rebellion. So I get it.
yeah, I mean, look back in the day, um, at the comedy store, look, blow was everywhere, and I, got off the rails a bit, and I partook, but I mean, it was in the kitchen at the store, it was in the green room at the store, and even though I was there for a short period of time, I partook, there and elsewhere, but with the likes of like Sam and Robin. Now we weren't sitting around a table, full disclosure, getting high and solving the problems of the world, but Sam might hit it, and then I might hit it, and then Robin or whatever. So I tell these stories, and my kids are like, "Oh, do as I say, not as I do, Dad." And I'm like, "These are cautionary tales." I go, "It's not. I'm not. That's what they are. I don't want you to do what I did. It might sound like I'm bragging. I did drugs with the legends and outlived them, but it's not to be cool. I'm not trying to be cool. Yeah, I don't know. One of the darkest things I do is just I don't know. Are we okay with language on this?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. One of the darkest things I've done on the show, and I just go, um, I go, Sam Kinison, because I was a good boy from, Catholic boy. I said, I go, aren't you concerned about all the sacrilegious shit you do? And he said something nasty about my hometown, Huntington Beach, and he told me to fuck off. And what I didn't realize at the time was that all I had to do really was leave it in the hands of Jesus. And then that gets an interesting reaction. And I go, hey, listen, I think both Sam and Robin would appreciate the darkness of that. But that was, it was interesting. It was 2 months of, and also I did notice and recognize with everybody, at the store, back in the day that, boy, there was a lot of misery and unhappiness. And you see, because there's that special now, The Dark Side of Comedy.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted out of that environment. I really didn't feel that comfortable in that environment. And, and I split, but, yeah.
Well, I feel like it was really dark for a certain period of time, and there is some suffering that comes with any art form inherently, but there's also a lot of really smart people who aren't necessarily unhappy at this point in stand up and just in entertainment in general. So I think we've turned a corner to where it's at maybe a healthier place than it would have been 40 years ago.
Right. Trey, you're the first person I've talked to in the media about doing this. I haven't really, I guess, I've been asked to, put something on social media. I don't use social media, but
Yeah.
to promote a show or two, I put it on Twitter or X or whatever, Insta. I've only done it a couple of times, but I've kept it kind of private, because it's like, let's get rolling before we even talk about this shit. And so I feel comfortable now because, I'm selling out shows. I'm having fun. People are enjoying it. And they're just like wanting to book me everywhere. I was told like, book across the country, now, but I didn't go into comedy at the age of 60 to become a road weary, tired, comic. But you got to stay sharp. So I got to do enough shows and write and continue to produce and do this in order to stay sharp. Because that's another reason why I never got back into it. I'm a stand-up snob. I would never want to be a mediocre stand-up comic. I just don't. It doesn't make sense. So you got to do this shit right. You got to eat, drink, sleep, and breathe this shit, which still I'm not doing, but I'm doing enough. I feel like my mind's working enough and I'm putting together enough stuff and I see the results and it's fun. So when you're really enjoying something and you're writing and you're performing and you're moving forward, it feels good.
Well, it's also important to leave your home base of Southern California and look, you doing this and exiting that comfort zone is already huge. I'm impressed just with that because you're doing something that is really hard, even if it comes naturally to you, standing up in front of a room full of strangers and making them laugh. is one of the most difficult things to do on the planet. So to exit that other comfort zone and to take
Yeah.
the act national is another step in the process, as is having these interviews with schlocky local radio people. I'm not necessarily calling that myself, but you're going to have to do a couple of morning shows to truly feel like a road tested stand-up comedian. The other thing that I'll give you credit for about your timing here is that I can't even imagine having a 10 and an 8-year-old and having to leave them every weekend to go on the road. That's not a concern for you anymore. You can enjoy
No,
your weekends, but you're also not missing youth sports games or other events, school functions, things like that by going on the road from time to time to Florida, Texas, wherever else.
true. Yeah. It's really pretty easy right now. And I do it when I want. And this is another thing, Trey. I mean, for 40 years, I haven't known this kind of creative freedom. I've always been told what to say it, where to stand. I write all my material, so it lives and dies with me on stage. And I do it when I want, where I want. And I've not known it. I love it. And so for me, and it didn't, take too long, but now I just feel like, that's where I live, as an artist, creatively, having fun actually is on stage. So I just love doing it now. I love getting up on stage.
That's
I
really
love the
beautiful.
interaction. Yeah.
And that's after your JuCo that you never finished up at, decided to bring you back to school last year to make you alumni of the year, and also to have you as their commencement speaker.
Yeah.
I may have gotten a version of this earlier in this conversation. I'm sure you told some great stories on stage, but what was your ultimate advice to those college students who are listening to you in the crowd?
I remember I opened with, I said, when I graduated from Newport Harbor High School, which is not far from OCC, my junior college. And a lot of people there actually went to Harbor. I said, our commencement speaker was the guy who created Hobie Cat Industries. And when he spoke, when he was a commencement speaker at high school, he said, hey, if y'all want to take a year or two off before you go to college and kick it around Hawaii, I did, and I'm a millionaire. And you could hear a collective gasp from all the parents in the audience, not what they wanted to hear. And then I go, this is worse. This is actually much worse. I failed out of Orange Coast College. The kids love this, by the way. The elder academics behind me shook their head the whole time. But yeah, I told a nice lady from the college when she bestowed this honor upon me, I said, I didn't finish, right? She says, yeah, we're aware of that. And then I go, your alumni pool must not be that deep. And she said nothing. I go, I'll do it. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, I ran and I ran with it, and it was just fun and an honor. And I love OCC. It's just that it wasn't for me. I had to split.
What was the advice that you gave the students when it was all said and done?
Well, follow your dreams, not your parents' dreams or anybody else. I'm not telling you to walk away from whatever it is that looks like it's in front of you, but do evaluate that, because right now what you're doing is you're going to you're putting yourself right now on that path for your future. So be passionate about it, love it, and understand that wherever you go, this is going to be your 9 to 5. This is going to be your day. This is going to be your life and your journey. So love what you're doing and make sure that you're doing everything for the right reasons, as opposed to being pushed.
In an effort to continue having a unique conversation with you versus the ones that you've probably become accustomed to over time, you are a huge Pearl Jam fan. You've met Eddie before. You got to put together a set list that he asked you to do at one point, which is really
Yeah.
cool. You've talked ad nauseum about some of your favorite Pearl Jam moments and songs. I'm not going to have you repeat yourself and tell people that you love Black or Yellow Ledbetter or whatever the favorite song, present tense, whatever the favorite song is right now for you with Pearl Jam. So instead, because I am a teenager of the 90s, so grunge is very much my style as well.
Yeah.
My favorite band is not Pearl Jam. I do remember the first time I saw and listened to 10, and it was mind blowing. My favorite band is actually the Toadies, but I do love Pearl Jam. So I'm going to tell you my favorite Pearl Jam song and see if it means anything to you. So my favorite Pearl Jam song is Off He Goes. You have any
I
thoughts
love it.
on that song?
I sang that with my band. I had a Pearl Jam cover band for a while. And
Bearded
my
Pearl
guitar,
Clan for anybody wondering.
the Bearded Pearl Clams, yes. And
Excuse
then,
me. Yeah.
the heart and soul of our band actually ended up, he had substance abuse issues and he took his life about 4 years ago. And that's the end of the band. And, the takeaway for me on that was just that God just intends for me to do karaoke. That's it. In my, my self-centered world. That's the message. The message is you're just a karaoke guy. That's it. but we did Off He Goes, and we did that Girl from the North Country. Some of them more, interesting, like Lessers. My favorite Pearl Jam song right now is "Come Back" off of
Oh,
Yield. I think that was on Yield, or that was on Binaural. Um, Inside Job, that meant a lot to me. I know McCready wrote that one. That was on Pearl Jam, on the the Avocado album. And yeah, of course, Black, Yellow Leather. We would grind out Black. It just got tough for me at the end because, that's when it goes a little out of my range. But I love doing it. It was just really fun. That was fun for me to do, for a little while. I love that band. Vetter's always been like, my muse, and so my wife, she thinks that I got a problem because she goes, why am I even saying this? She goes, these are like the dumb conversations I have with my wife. She goes, you have a problem. You can't get a drink in you without talking about Vedder. And I go, well, he is Bob Dylan with the voice of Eddie Vedder. And she goes, you're doing it right now. And I go, you're jealous that you don't have an artist in the world that you're as passionate about as I am about Eddie Vedder. And then she goes, I'm going to ask you a question. I go, if he asked you to suck his dick, would you? And she goes, how'd you know I was going to ask that? And I go, because you've asked me that before. And then she goes, well, would you? And I go, no, but I would jerk him off. I would jerk him off like that. But these are the dumb conversations that we have. Musicians, that to me, that's what makes the world go round. I would argue I could sit in a room with, Pacino, De Niro, and Daniel Day-Lewis, the greatest actor of our generation, and be nonplussed because I feel like I could actually work with anybody. I really do. I have that, that attitude. I'm not saying that I'm on par with them, but I know that I can. It's musicians that blow me away. That's why I still have trouble talking to Ed, because he's been sweet to me throughout the years and very kind. He gave me a Social Distortion t-shirt.
yeah.
That was just amazing. And Kathy and I walk out to the car. I know she was spying on me, and I took that shirt and I just, I took it up to my nose and I smelled it. And then I looked at her with a frown and I go, it's clean. I can't look at this. It doesn't have a scent. So to me, it's music, it's the great artists that, that those are the ones that blow me away,
And that is too funny. Barry Sonnenfeld has a really good Larry David story. You obviously worked on Seinfeld too. Larry is a character. Do you have a good Larry David story?
It's a long one. It's stupid. I think it's why I was never invited to be on Curb. I
Really?
think I just irritated the shit out of him one time. Well, we used to do,
Everybody does. Everybody does that though.
yeah. It was just a situation when we were up at Deer Valley doing these celebrity ski races, and it was a charity event for the Waterkeepers Association, which was headed up by Robert Kennedy Jr., who I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but he sued DuPont. I mean, when the Hudson waters were toxic,
Yep.
he sued them for billions of dollars, and they had to clean it. And you could actually catch fish apparently out of the Hudson and eat them now. So he has accomplished some great things, in his life there. We would have to shoot these stupid things or whatever, silly things, vignettes. And there was one, and I just thought it was kind of lame. I pitched an idea to Larry. I don't think he was on board. And then I sort of forced him into it while the cameras were rolling. I think he was irritated. And that was it, And it was like, come on, Larry, improvise. This is what you do, but he really didn't want to play. And that was it. That was it. And I was like, I irritated the shit out of him. I will never be on Curb. So whatever.
You know what? That actually tracks based on what his demeanor was as a stand-up comedian in New York in
Yeah.
the late 70s and early 80s, where he would just get super irritated with the crowd and just start essentially trying to make people walk. Which, look, there are comedians where that's kind of their shtick. They try and leave the place with empty rooms, but I feel like you're not that guy. You're trying to make that room full of people laugh at Cap City Comedy Club this weekend. All right,
Yes.
last couple questions now, real quick, Patrick. First off, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Well, it means everything from the very beginning to now. Just we have our first grandchild on the way,
Mm,
which is really,
congrats.
really cool. Um, Early on, I wasn't ready to be a father. I was living across the street from the beach in Santa Monica with a buddy of mine who was an actor. We had a 2-bedroom. It was $500 a piece a month. All we had to do is like knock out a commercial or two a year, and that would pay for booze, food. We'd hang out at the beach, shoot pool. A year later, I got a kid. I'm married. I live in Van Nuys with a mortgage payment. It's like, what happened to my life at the beach? I was kind of digging that shit. And now I'm saddled with all this stuff. But what it did was it cleaned up my act. And that was the end of drugs. It was the end of drugs, and, still drink. That's a drug, right? Trey? But I had to clean my act up because now it's like you better focus on your career because you have a family to take care of. So having a family helped save me, I think, early on. And throughout all those struggles, we've been really fortunate because we have like the four best kids in the world. They're all adults right now. They didn't put any of us through hell. They didn't put Kathy or I through hell. And they've surrounded themselves with the best friends in the world. They're just really, really good people. They've straightened me out in so many ways. And I'm so thankful for them. I'm so thankful for them, just being who they are. Now, I think some of that you could attribute to good parenting, but you can't all because there are great parents that have kids that just go off the rails. So we have been very lucky and fortunate and blessed that way. They're all funny, they're charming, they're unique, they're loving, they care for everybody. They're a great bunch. So we've just been very, very fortunate. Got the four best kids in the world.
Very fortunate, but clearly y'all did something right too. I mean, there's only so much you can control, but you instill a certain baseline of morals and virtues and problem solving. I mean, the goal is to create independent adults who can be
Yeah.
present and understand how to deal with the good and bad that life doles out, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And they got the best mom in the world. She's done an amazing job. Now I shit all over her in the show, but that's what people expect. You got to do that. People don't come to shows and want. My wife is the best. Now you're complaining, Bella. I complain. I talk about my show. It's really just me complaining, but
You're a beta cuck if that's what you're doing as a stand-up comedian.
my mom's like, I'm sure you talk about me. I'm like, Mom, I don't have a show without you. So thank you for that. She's 87. She's never, hopefully, ever going to see it.
All right, last question now. I love stand-up. You obviously love stand-up as well. What do you love about stand-up comedy, Patrick?
Well, I think I already mentioned why, and it's this. It's all 100% you. It's your perspective. It's your stories. As I said, lives and dies with you. You're the only one responsible for it, and it is immediate reaction. So all actors, anyways, love theater, and it's live theater where you are interacting with an audience. You're telling stories. You're seeing the results immediately. And it's addictive that way. I guess that's why, Jerry went back to it. He was offered, something like $5 million a show to continue doing Seinfeld. At that point, I guess he had more money than God, didn't care, and wanted to do what he wanted to do, which was get back on stage and do stand up, So it is, it's fun. It's like a drug. And you get to, you get to exercise, so many different things. It's therapy. You share things and you let everybody else decide, what I think honesty and truth, and I love it. It's authentic. That's why I tell some weird stories, but they're true. There's every now and then, you gussy things up with a stupid joke. And I think people can recognize what the stupid jokes are and what's authentic and what you're talking about is, in that vein. Yeah.
We're at one of the most important points in human history for the sake of coming together with complete strangers and laughing, and stand-up comedians are the ones responsible for making that happen in a large majority of those cases. Yes, Patrick Warburton. This is going to be some great shows that you have an opportunity to check out at Cap City Comedy Club this weekend. 2 shows on Friday, 7 and 9:30. Same on Saturday, 7 and 9:30, and a 7 o'clock show on Sunday. Go to capcitycomedy.com to snag those tickets. I will be at one of those shows this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. Patrick, thank you so much for the time today, man. This has been a real honor and pleasure.
Pleasure's been mine, Trey. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in a few days.
You're still watching or listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere. We greatly appreciate you subscribing to this show, and please do like today's episode. Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. We'll talk to you next time. Books on Pod.